It's time for another edition of Lewis at Large, 60 minutes of smart talk radio featuring guests from all walks of life in conversation with your host, Warner Lewis. So sit back and lend us your ears for the next hour. Now here with today's first guest is the host of Lewis at Large, Warner Lewis.
Welcome, everybody, to another edition of Lewis at Large. Yours truly, Warner Lewis from the flight deck. And, of course, as always, that means some Smart Talk Radio is just around the corner for you. This segment should be an interesting one indeed. We're going to be talking to Mike McCrary. Who is Mike McCrary? Well, formerly a CPA, but went on and got his law degree. He's a veteran of many Democrat Clinton campaigns and is also the author of Race, Power, and Politics, a primer on ACORN and grassroots community organizing, which chronicles the historic 2008 Democratic primary contest from an African-American perspective. Should be an interesting conversation indeed. Mike, how are you, my friend?
I'm doing well, Warner. Thank you for having me on.
Well, we're pleased to have you here. It has not been long, but now that you've had a chance to kind of come up, catch your breath, how about some thoughts on the recent election?
Yeah, I am a recovering Democrat. And the general election, I mean, it's a wonderful time where the people get to express themselves. And unfortunately, from my side, the people did not agree with us. So we've got a lot of soul searching to do. But in my opinion, Warner, this was more of a campaign that Hillary Clinton lost rather than one that Donald Trump won.
Let me ask you a question. That's been said before. If the Republicans run anyone but Trump, it's an easy win. If the Democrats run anyone but Clinton, it's an easy win. Do you agree with that, or do you believe Hillary Clinton could have won this even easily if she did things differently?
Well, Warner, I as a political strategist, man, I don't think presidential campaigns are easy regardless. It's always work, and especially in this time, I guess, in the out years of President Barack Obama, the country, unfortunately, is pretty much evenly split. So while I really didn't have the highest regard for Donald Trump as a primary candidate, I thought that, again, someone with no political experience and reality TV star, all of that. I thought that there were a slate of very formidable GOP candidates that, I thought would have probably, taken them on. But once you become the nominee of either major party, you're basically a coin toss away from the White House. And so I was warning, all the Democratic side that, look, you can't really take the guy for granted because we are starting off at, basically a 45-45 electorate, and, the delta is in the 10 points in the middle.
What kind of stars do you think aligned in this particular election that brought Donald Trump into office? I mean, there's lots of different theories. I'm just curious, though, from your perspective in particular.
Well, one is, I think, the free pass that the media and the other primary contenders gave Donald Trump. I think that there was a time, I hate to say it, man, but there was a time when you could have ripped the bark off the tree, so to speak. But the challenge that the other primary contestants had was, how do you go after Donald Trump but not infuriate Donald Trump voters? So they were trying to have their cake and eat it too. And you had, 16 or 17 other contenders that decided that they wouldn't be the one to engage because they wanted to kind of reap the spoils from in the aftermath. And it was one of those situations where, what do you say, nobody did a job that anybody could do, but, something like that. But anyway, so because no one took him on directly until it was too late, he developed this massive amount of momentum and basically bulldozed the entire GOP establishment.
Another way to put it, as some might say, is everybody's responsibility ends up being no one's responsibility, so to speak.
There you go. But, and then also I guess Donald Trump mastered, the Twitter platform and his use of Facebook and really using his expertise using free media, or I guess more so earned media, based on his background in television. I think people didn't really appreciate the value, the economic value of that expertise. And so the thing that really, Warner, that really amazes me is you had somebody who won the presidency that didn't have a real campaign until maybe the last, 45 to 60 days. And as a political strategist, that is amazing to me. Because the one thing is, running for president is something that you can't do by yourself. You have to build a campaign. You have to have an organization. You have to have a team. And the way that he kind of he essentially, built an airplane while he was on takeoff.
Well, it's hard to predict, obviously, but Michael, I'm curious again from your perspective. He won running, as you just said, a very non-traditional campaign, so to speak. He was a non-traditional candidate saying non-traditional things, and without even being political, you could easily make the case half of what he says was not factual, and a lot of it was taken. But a lot of people would say it didn't matter to Trump voters. They didn't take him literally. They took him really for just the general essence of what he was saying. In your opinion, does that change potentially the way people look at political candidates and campaigns in the future, or do you see this as just kind of a one-time glitch?
It's frightening. It is absolutely frightening what he was able to accomplish. I mean, essentially, he ran a fact-free campaign. And again, for somebody who works in politics, I mean, that is truly remarkable. I would hope that nothing like this would ever be able to happen again, because it really kind of tells you the frustration level of the American electorate. I just kind of think more of Americans and their opinions of the political process, but it really shows you how low most Americans view the Beltway. So that it's like anybody but them can win, and did.
Now, if you just joined us, yours truly, Warner Lewis, from the flight deck again of Lewis Large Radio. We're talking to Michael McCrary. He's a veteran of numerous Democratic campaigns, also the author of Race, Power, and Politics, a primer on ACORN and grassroots community organizing. One of the things that I know you have some strong opinions about is the fact that blacks and Hispanics, they voted for Hillary Clinton, nowhere near what was anticipated, and that they may have possibly, the campaign should have seen this coming. Share, if you would, a little bit of your thoughts about that.
Sure. I think, one is the overall, because of the negativity in the campaign, you really had the suppression of a lot of votes. And whether you attribute that to some of the voter intimidation, dirty tricks in terms of changing polling locations, clamping down on early voting. There's a lot of stuff that goes on with it. But generally speaking, even when you have very negative contests, that has the effect of suppressing the vote. So that's one thing. And ultimately, when you look at it, you've got the black vote tends to vote Democratic, partially because of just historic positions that the parties have taken, and also the policy prescriptions of the GOP kind of make voting for Republican anathema for a number of African Americans. But there's a difference between African American turnout being in the high 70s and African American turnout being in the 90 plus range. So that's one of the things that you kind of have to take a look at. And so if you look at this cycle, the African American women voted 94, 95% for Hillary Clinton, which is great. That's around the same levels as Obama. But African-American males voted essentially at 80%, which is essentially high 70s. And so when I kind of look between the numbers, and I see that a Democrat lost Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin, traditional Democratic strongholds, by less than 2 points, what that tells me is that there was probably something wrong with the ground game. The election day GOTV, knocking on the doors, blowing the horns, getting the people up and getting them to the polls, apparently that didn't happen. And when viewed in that manner, the difference in this election could have been changed by 4 African-American counties, 1 in Michigan, 1 in Wisconsin, and 2 in Pennsylvania, and you could have changed the outcome of the whole election.
What go back to the very beginning. You're suddenly Hillary Clinton's campaign manager, and let's go all the way back to the convention. She has made her convention an acceptance speech. What are you doing differently?
I think, I will go back further than that. I think that one of the problems that the Democratic Party has been struggling with is the definition of how do you deal with the Obama coalition. So, Barack Obama runs a spectacular campaign in 2008, which I chronicle in my book, Race, Power, and Politics. Spectacular campaign and spectacular re-elect. But we've gotten numbers where essentially he created a youth movement that mobilized many people who are outside the usual political process. More people came to vote that don't generally participate. And so we have this thing called the Obama coalition. Now, if the Obama coalition is a Democratic coalition, then the Democratic Party stands well to receive, to benefit on into the future. The problem is it's possible that the Obama coalition is strictly an Obama coalition. And so when we looked at the numbers in 2008 and 2012, great numbers. In 2010, we saw the numbers, the Obama coalition didn't turn out. Now, maybe that was a one-off. But by 2014, the midterm elections, we saw that, the Obama coalition was not the Obama coalition and the Obama strategy and the tactics, they weren't turning out the votes that were needed for Democrats to win. So to me, at that point in time, in 2014, it was dispositive that the Obama coalition was not something that was easily transferable. Now, the Hillary for America essentially hired the Obama team, hired their analytical people, and they set about turning out the Obama coalition. I personally believe that there is a Hillary coalition that's a winning coalition. It's just not the same one. And by that, you've changed the focus of your entire campaign. So essentially, we had Hillary was building a Ferrari when she needed a truck.
Indeed. Next question for you. Trump administration going forward, what will be their desire to appeal to, enfranchise in any way, shape, or form Black American, Black voters?
Very scary times. I believe that Donald Trump is probably more of a political agnostic than an ideologue. But the people that he's surrounding himself with and right now, the Republican Party has carte blanche control over the government. So I'm more concerned with the staffing and who the cabinet's going to be and all the, cabinet level officials and the agency administrators. So I think there may be some room to negotiate with President Trump. I'm just afraid that with the total control of the government by Republicans, I really fear an overreach.
What, again, as you look back, let's also talk about, and again, I understand your book, Race, Power, and Politics, is really about Acorn, but if you would, share your thoughts also about the Hispanic vote and what might have been done differently there, and what did Trump do right?
Well, I think a lot of people don't recognize that, the Hispanic culture tends to be more conservative by nature. As a matter of fact, Warner, African American culture tends to be, one, I describe myself as a conservative Democrat that's liberal on race. So one is there's a lot of times that, people, when they look at these groups, they think they're ultra progressives, and that's not necessarily true. Belief in, traditional family values, still, with Hispanics, there's heavily Catholic influence. African Americans, still, African American church is very strong, and there's still a strong vein of entrepreneurship in both cultures. So there are things that are appealing to African Americans and Hispanics that the Republican Party actually represents. It's just sometimes I guess I would say the infusion of the alt-right and the tolerance of racism kind of turns us off and shuts us down. Now, the Hispanic vote for Trump was, I think, in nearly 30% or around 30%, which it may be surprising to me, but that's not that surprising to me. What I was floored by was the women's vote for Donald Trump, which was, 47%. And I would have thought out of all the things that came out in the Trump in the general election cycle, I would have thought that there would have been much more support from women for Hillary Clinton.
Where does Michael, from your perspective here, where does the Democratic Party go from here? How do they sort of regroup, and what kinds of leadership is needed? What kind of candidates you think on the national level, even on the local level, are needed? And quite frankly, same thing for the Republican Party, because, again, as you said, I would agree with you that Donald Trump is not the traditional model of the Republican Party, not necessarily that they have to stay with a traditional model, but what's the Republican Party need to do now?
Right. Well, in terms of the Democrats, I think this is a critical time for the Democratic Party, and I would hope that we don't learn the wrong lessons. As I look at the map and the sea of red in terms of all the counties that went for Donald Trump. There's a group of Democrats that want to turn further left to become even more progressive. And when I'm reading how I interpret the returns from the election, I'm not sure that's what America is saying that they want. So I would hope that there is a lot of soul searching and a lively debate that deals with the future of the Democratic Party, because I would hate for it to get too far out of line with mainstream America. As far as the Republicans, hey man, when it's almost like you got to go with the winner. When you got the Oval Office, the House, the Senate, 2 or 3 Supreme Court justices probably on the way, the majority of the state legislature, and 30 plus governorships. It's hard to argue with winning. I would hope that they don't do what Republicans have done in the past in terms of having carte blanche to overreach and put to create that type of discord in the country. But the ball's in their court right now. We're going to see how they lead.
Let's and again, if you just joined us, we're in the middle of a good one here. Again, we're talking to Michael McCrary. He is a veteran of numerous campaigns, and just as importantly, he's also the author of Race, Power, and Politics, a primer on ACORN and grassroots community organizing, which chronicled the historic 2008 Democratic Party contest from an African-American perspective. What about is the nature of our campaigns changing? Has it now been changed for good, so to speak, as a result of this campaign? Or is there still a place for the Democratic Party building its sort of traditional base that it used to have, and the Republican Party building their more traditional base?
I would like for this to go back, at least for Democrats, to go back to Howard Dean and the 50-state strategy. I think sometimes, unfortunately, as Democrats and liberals can often outsmart themselves. And I think the focus on big data and analytics and all this data-driven campaigning, what it does is it presupposes that someone is wise enough or smart enough or has enough information to find 51% of the electorate, and therefore focus all the resources on just speaking and persuading that 51%. And see, what happens is, by definition, you're seating 49%, half the population that you're almost giving no voter contact or attention to at all. And from a Democratic perspective, what happens is that means you lose all the down ballot races, and that's how you lose state legislatures, and that's how you lose control over the governor's mansions, and that's how you lose, that's how you have this tidal wave. And what's worse is you also stagnate your bench of future Democrats. So now we don't have that city councilman who became a state rep who's developing his political chops, because essentially we've conceded 3/4 of the land base of the country to the other side. And so I think that's an unfortunate consequence of the belief that you can rely on data to target individual voters, and that you can, between mobile apps and cell phones and, a few $100 million on television, that you can win elections. Because ultimately, a fish fry beats a cold call every day. And you got to get back to grassroots community organizing and retail politics, because, I wrote about this in the Huffington Post. What good is data without relationships? And that's where we've kind of gotten disconnected from the base vote, whether that be the African-American base vote or even working-class Americans in our rural communities. We got to build the relationships first, and the data is just a tool. It's not the goal.
Yeah. What about, as you see, because you've been around these campaigns a bunch, what about what will Trump's, do you believe, and again, as of this recording, he has not named a press secretary yet, but what do you see his relationship over the next 4 years is with the press? What should it be, and what should their responsibilities be? Should it be any different with this president than anyone else?
Well, it shouldn't be any different, but honestly, man, I question. Donald Trump is such an enigma. It's almost, to me, when I watch him, it seems like he doesn't necessarily have a basic understanding of basic civics and constitutional law. Like a lot of this stuff, when he chastises the press, if you don't really understand how the First Amendment works and why it's important, we start to talk about we're going to increase libel suits against journalists. It's like, really? And so I think right now, as I just said, that, there's total control of state and federal government in Republican hands. We really have to rely on guys like you, Warner. The Fourth Estate has really got to save America. And I'm not sure if our president-elect has a fundamental understanding or appreciation of what that appropriate role is.
Well, it will be an interesting 4 years for sure. We have been talking to Michael McCrary, again, a veteran of many Democratic Clinton campaigns, and also the author of Race, Power, and Politics, a primer on ACORN and grassroots community organizing, in particular chronicling, I'm saying that word right, it chronicles the historic 2008 Democratic primary contest from an African-American perspective. Michael, how can people find out more about some of the writings that you do? Maybe pick up a copy of the book, just get some more information.
Great. Thank you for asking. The book is available on Amazon and also anywhere books are sold. You can go to your local bookstore, and it may not be in stock, but they can probably get it in 2 or 3 days. You can also get it from our website, which is www.acorn8.com, which is the web. Once again, it's acorn8.com, which chronicles, what happened with the whistleblowers at Acorn. And then also at my personal website, you can get it at www.michael, M-I-C-H-A-E-L, McCray, MCCRAY.net.
Okay, Michael McCray. Hey, listen, thank you so much for spending some time with us and sharing your thoughts, and would love to have you back on again sometime.
All right, thank you so much, Warner. Have a blessed day.
You bet. We'll be back with more right after this on Lewis at Large. You love your dog and you love your yard, but sometimes what your dog leaves behind can make you not love your yard so much. Well, when that happens, it's Call of Duty Pet Waste Removal Service to the rescue. Large or small dogs, big yard or small, call Call of Duty. They clean up the mess your dog leaves behind. So if you're tired of cleaning pet waste from your yard, call Call of Duty, 764-7224. That's 764-7224. Prompt, effective, courteous services on the way. Your yard is left clean and waste-free. So don't waste any more time on waste. Call Call of Duty in Lawrence, 764-7224. That's 764-7224. Or visit their website, Call of Duty 2000.